Good afternoon. It's April 17th and the 5 p.m. hour here on KLAM. And we are pleased to return to a concept that was designed a couple of weeks ago, and we were able to do one of these shows. And then last week, everybody was too busy, and we weren't able to get anybody to be a guest for it. But the idea here is that Fridays at 5 p.m., we dedicate some airtime to focusing on frequently asked questions and providing the researched answers to those. Ideally, we like to do that with members of the incident management team as our guests to talk about these things. But, of course, they are all very busy. And in fact, I'm thinking one of the things we might do is go down the list of things that, all of the irons that the incident management team has in the fire, basically, and let you know what it is that they're doing, which will give you an idea why maybe they're not available to talk with me just at the moment. But there's a lot on their behalf that I can pass on to you. And then also, the other thing we want to cover on today's program is the fact that there is very soon to be an explosion of frequently asked questions and answers on this new website that the city is developing and that they are hoping is going to go live on Monday. And that should be, by all reports, a very good asset for people to get information, frequently asked questions, communicate with the city council and the people that are making all the decisions and all of that kind of thing. So I haven't seen the beta version of it myself, but based on the discussion that's being had, the assets that this new website is being modeled after, the fact that there is a professional PR organization and webmaster working on it, I hope that we are on the verge of seeing a very significant amount of improvement in the communication between the people handling the emergency and everybody in the public that would like to be able to know what's going on. I know that's something that I've been pushing for a couple of weeks now. We tried to set some things up, but it just, I guess it kind of wasn't the right time. But it's falling into place now. If you've been listening through the week, you've heard we've been able to actually visit with Mayor Copeland for our daily briefings. Probably all we had to do, actually, to make that work was take the word mayor off of the graphic for our YouTube videos. For those, because it said mayor's briefing, we could never visit with him. And then as soon as we took the word mayor off, lo and behold, we get to visit with him every day. But that's actually just nonsense. Actually, what's happening is things are coming together very, very well. And so let's start with an overview of the information that is headed your way. I have some draft documents that were sent to me by the information or the incident management team. These are not things that have been published yet, but I want to go over to share with you kind of in advance of this website launching the broad categories of FAQ content that's coming out soon, and then look at some of the questions that will be answered so you know what you can look forward to here in the very, very near future. For example, there's a general section that will be coming in the frequently asked questions portion of this website. And under that, you are going to soon find answers for if a person had COVID-19 symptoms and is having severe difficulty breathing, then what happens? And the short answer is, I won't get into all the details here, but the short answer is you need to seek medical attention. Just please call wherever you're going, let them know you're on the way so they can put on their PPE, their protective equipment, masks and gowns and so forth. And then this talks about medevacing and choice of hospital and some other things. Another question about how many tests are currently available in Cordova. Short answer is 600. But again, the actual FAQ will have much more thorough answers to these. What happens if someone tests positive, and it explains how things change in terms of the response if we get a positive test at some point. What are the fines for violating state health mandates? What are the fines for individuals violating Cordova's COVID-19 emergency rules? What to do if you see someone violating a state mandate or a local emergency rule? And actually, the answer on those is short enough that I can just tell you. If you see a business or an individual violating a state health mandate, you report it by email to investigations@alaska.gov. And if you see a business or individual violating a local rule, you can report that to the police department. I would encourage people, again, be sure you know what the local rules are before calling the police about something. For example, masks are not yet mandatory. They're encouraged. They may become mandatory any day at this point, the way things are going. But right now, it's not mandatory. So if you see someone out there not wearing a mask, you don't call the police on them. So if you're going to get into reporting, make sure you know what you're supposed to be reporting on, and these documents that are coming out soon to this new website will help with that. They have a separate section under the FAQ information about businesses and questions that you will see extensive answers to. Again, too long for this program, but what is an essential business or critical infrastructure position under the state mandate? And there's a big list of those. What kinds of businesses have to fill out and turn in the city's mutual aid agreement? I can tell you quickly on that one, it's all local businesses who plan to be open need to fill out one of these agreements. We did ours for the radio stations, and it's very easy. You're just basically telling the city that you read some stuff, a bunch of safety information, and you can see it by going to cityofcordova.net. There's one for small businesses and one for larger ones. Another question that gets answered here is, my small business supports critical infrastructure, and I have travelers coming in from out of state. What do I need to do under the state health mandates? Is commercial construction considered essential under the state health mandates? And the answer to that is yes, by the way, but you're going to want to explore the details. It's not a blanket permission to do anything anywhere. Are hotels, beds, and breakfasts essential businesses under state health mandates? That answer is actually yes, but only for providing essential services like housing for local residents or essential workers, or for isolation or quarantine. Can restaurants still provide takeout services under the shelter-in-place social distancing state mandate? Short answer is yes, as long as they're following the rules. And again, those rules are actually out there, but once this content is published, you'll be able to read all of this. Another question, what all is closed? Certain types of businesses are not supposed to be open during shelter in place. Can people call a plumber or electrician? Basically, yes, if they're following the proper rules. And another one I get a lot, can I go clothes shopping? And actually, casual shopping is not encouraged because you have to social distance. Deliveries is recommended. So again, the detailed official answers will be coming out soon. We're just kind of giving you an overview of what to look forward to. Here's a big area, harbor and fishing related questions. Is commercial fishing an essential service, and is the Cordova Harbor open? Can fishing vessels sail port to port? For those returning to Cordova for the fishing season who quarantined in the state of Alaska already, do you need to quarantine again when you arrive in Cordova? I'll tell you on that one, it's mostly yes, but there are caveats. Can someone work on their boat while in self-isolation or quarantine? That's a big old long answer. We'll have to let you read that. If your boat is in the harbor, you can quarantine there, but getting set up to live on board can take time. How do you accomplish that under quarantine? That's another question that's been asked a lot, and the answer is going to be published very soon. What if your boat's in storage on land and needs work in order to get it in the water? Can you reasonably follow the rules for self-quarantine and accomplish this? Somebody else asked, I'm a gill netter who will be coming over from another community before the season starts and have no residence in Cordova. I understand self-quarantine for 14 days is mandatory. Can I stay on my boat, but without things like a fridge or bathroom, electricity, and so forth? Isolating without leaving my boat would be logistically difficult. Is there a plan in place for this situation? So those questions are all going to be answered in detail when this website launches. Frequently asked questions regarding quarantine and self-isolation. You'll have answers to how do I self-care during quarantine and self-isolation? What if I develop symptoms during my quarantine? And should elderly or high-risk individuals follow different protocols beyond the 14-day quarantine? Those questions have all been answered. In addition, the document has what is the definition of a quarantine, what is the definition of isolation, when should I quarantine, how do I quarantine properly, what is social distancing and how do I practice it, what if I live with someone, how do we social distance, can I go to the post office, can I start my quarantine in one location and finish in another? Does being in quarantine and practicing social distancing mean I can't go outside? That's been a big one. And again, the answer is coming out soon. May I visit family members or friends while in quarantine? How do I obtain groceries, tools, or other supplies while in quarantine? These are all answers, again, that you can look forward to when these documents are released. And then the fifth main category here is traveling protocol, and the questions that are answered are Alaska health mandate requires 14-day self-quarantine for all entering Alaska from out of state. There are forms for passengers to fill out. How is this handled in Cordova? By the way, I can tell you that's an evolving situation, and it's evolving in the right direction, including the utilization of these volunteers that were working on their own, but as we learned at today's council meeting, they are now working with the the incident management team. Another question, if our travel plans to Cordova include a layover in Anchorage, do we have to quarantine in Anchorage for 14 days before returning to Cordova? If my child just arrived home to Cordova and has to self-quarantine in my home, does everyone in the household have to self-quarantine for 14 days with them? There's an answer that explains that. What about military personnel? May I drive to visit or fly to visit another family member in Alaska? By the way, I can tell you the answer is no on that one, but you'll see the fuller answer. What is being done to ensure the safety of the community with the arrival of seasonal workers and fishermen? That's a huge one. You'll get an answer to that. Is it possible to shut down the airport and not allow any more people into Cordova? If you've been paying attention, you probably know the answer to that is no. But the more fleshed out answer is in this document. What is the state of Alaska mandate regarding travel between communities? How long does the state health mandate prohibiting travel between Alaska communities last? By the way, I know that's April 21st. When they reevaluate it, they may extend it, but they're going to take another look. And then the last question in this section, are the employees of essential services and critical infrastructure permitted to travel under the intrastate travel ban? Short answer is yes, but there are a lot of things a person needs to know to be able to do that. So that is a very brief and maybe not super helpful, and I understand that, but again, I don't want to just read all this stuff, first of all, because it would take forever and probably bore you, and secondly, because it hasn't been published yet, and I'm not, and I apologize if it bothers you that we're not this way, but I'm not one of these press people who is going to throw a bunch of stuff out just so we can be first and we can say, oh, you heard it first on KLAM, and aren't we wonderful? And, that kind of behavior on the part of some in the press nauseates me. I mean, I can't even watch, I'm sorry to get editorial here, but I can't even watch the national news most of the time anymore because, a lot of these people are more interested at that level. They're more interested in their own fame or their own importance than they actually are about getting the truth to people. We want to always get information to you in the way that makes it most effective, I guess, is how I'd like to think of it. And so we want to provide an overview of this, and then the longer answers you can look forward to getting soon. And once the stuff is out, by the way, then we'll go over it in chunks in greater detail. But I just wanted you to have a sense today of what's coming. Now, the last thing I want to do with this show is go over all of the current objectives of our incident management team. These are the people with, as Liam Neeson would say, a very particular set of skills. And they've been brought together to use those skills to achieve the two main objectives of the city's incident management team: to ensure the health and safety of the community, number one, and then number two, to promote economic stability. And again, this may be a little dry, but I want to run down all these bullet points that represent irons in the fire for the incident management team, so everybody has an understanding of how much they're working on and the scope of it. So here they are. They are going to maintain situational awareness at the national, state, and local level. They're going to follow federal and state recommendations to decrease outbreak. They're going to support all stakeholders through constant sharing of information to help protect the public, facilitate the sharing of information from the federal and state level to the local level, understand and be responsive to local needs and requests, convey the critical role of local health departments during transition period to community outbreaks, determine specific isolation places, techniques, and challenges for the local and transient population, outreach to Cordova ports of entry, to include the harbor, AMHS, and the Cordova airports, pre-plan policies and procedures to include awareness, possible delays or closures, and finally, pre-plan for the next operational period to determine the needs of the community. Now, those were some kind of general objectives. And by the way, they list out the different members of the incident management team who are responsible for these things. I'm not going to go over all of that. You can read it if you want to. It's part of the agenda for the work session that took place earlier today, the noon April 17th work session. So if you want to read who's doing these things, you can do that by downloading that document. Now, the objectives for public safety. Identify 2 full-time individuals as safety officers to oversee public safety objectives. Identify backup personnel for each activated IMT position and have them participating in all aspects of the response. Develop Cordova health mandates, which are at least as stringent as state and federal regulations. Provide for weekly review of Cordova health mandates to determine whether they need to be updated or changed as a result of new information. That right there is enough to keep you busy for the rest of your life. I know, but because we're doing it too. Establish a comprehensive plan for medically screening and educating every person that enters Cordova. That's another thing they're working on. Establish a plan for quarantine facilities. Establish a plan for an isolation facility. Establish a plan for information flow between medical staff, cannery medical staff, and the IMT. Establish a plan for protecting the elder and high-risk population in Cordova. Establish a plan for protecting the first responders and medical personnel in Cordova. Establish a plan for managing the ports of entry into Cordova. So those all are under the heading of public safety. And those are all the irons in the fire. Under communications, develop a plan to see that all pertinent incident communications, plans, and changes are communicated through messaging logs on the Knowledge Center. Develop a plan to facilitate more frequent and easier communications between incident management team members. Here's one of my favorites. Deliver a daily briefing to Cordova citizens, including all updated health mandates with the local perspective on coronavirus response. Yay! Sorry, I'm biased on that one. Provide the Cordova Daily Briefing information in English, Spanish, and Tagalog. Reach out to the canneries for interpreters to translate daily briefings in any other language that's needed, and effectively monitor and respond on the Cordova Prepared website within 6 hours to inaccurate rumors involving local coronavirus issues. Now, I hadn't seen that, but heck yeah. Oh, man. If we could do that, that's like fact check. Now, under the heading of security and enforcement, an objective is to establish a plan for enforcement of the local health mandates and establish a plan for security of the ports of entry, the airport, the harbor, and the ferry terminal, as well as the hospital and any associated isolation or quarantine facilities. And then finally, a few miscellaneous points. Develop a plan to avoid local congestion on the internet, at the post office, and in the grocery stores. So if you were wondering if the incident management team has been busy and do they have a lot of irons in the fire, there's several minutes worth. And if you want to read them, again, you can see this information by downloading the agenda for City Council work session April 17th at noon. These things are attached along with a chart of the people that are on the incident management team and the structure of that team. And I would point out what was pointed out at this meeting, that this list of objectives is fluid. It can change. Things can be added or deleted as maybe they get completed, or as, anytime a new state mandate comes out, for example, or a federal mandate, a bunch of these things may have to change. So each incarnation of this is a snapshot. This is current as of today, but who knows what the weekend will bring or whatever. But this is one that you can look at to, at the very least, give you a broad overview of everything this team is doing for us. And the fact that they are putting more emphasis on the communicating with the public part of it, I could not be more excited, because that's a big part of what we want to do, is to give you the information that you need to not be nervous to the greatest extent possible, of course, and to be able to assist either as a volunteer, if one of these areas is something that you want to help with. These are all areas where you could say, hey, I'd like to assist with doing this part. Or if you have any suggestions for additional objectives or, whatever. Communication is key to that. And I want to thank the council and the IMT for its focus on making that more robust. So that is what will pass for our Frequently Asked Questions program for this week. It's a program that we hope to have be more answers and less questions, fewer questions, I should say, in the future. But for today, again, because everything is evolving, we wanted to give you that overview of the questions that have been answered, and you will be able to read those answers in full detail very soon. Once this new website is up, their goal is Monday. And then again, we wanted to give you an idea of what the incident management team is focusing on and all of these different objectives that they're working on. So you have a sense of how much is being done. under those two main objectives, which again they were careful to spell out in council. Priority 1, ensure the health and safety of the community. And then priority 2, promoting economic stability, in that order. So this has been our FAQ program for Friday, April 17th. Each Friday during the 5 p.m. hour on KLAM, we'll play it for you on the radio, and then Robbie will archive it as soon as possible on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cordova TV. So if you heard this show on the air or you heard it online and there's somebody else that you'd like to pass it along to, you can share links right from that YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cordova TV. Thanks so much for listening, and we hope you have a great weekend.